Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Surabhyaya Namaha.
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 Mukham karoti vasaram pangum langayate girim yatkripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam yatkripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class, and we continue reading from canto number 1, chapter 2. Today, verse number 27. Huh? Chapter 2, entitled Divinity and Divine Service, text 27. Rajas Tamaha Prakritayah Sama Shita Bhajanti Vai Pitri Bhuta Prajeshadin Sri Aishwarya Prajapsavaha Rajastama Prakritaya Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitri Bhuta Prajeshadin Sri Aishwarya Prajapsavaha Rajastama Prakritaya Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitri Bhuta Prajeshadin Sri Aishwarya Prajapsavaha Rajastama Prakritaya Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitri Bhuta Prajeshadin Sri Aishwarya Prajapsavaha
Rajastamaha Prakritayah Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitribhuta Prajeshadin Sri Aishwarya Prajapsavaha
Rajastama Prakritayah Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pitribhuta Prajeshadin Aishwarya Prajapsavaha
Rajaha. The mode of passion. Tamaha. The mode of ignorance. Prakritaya. of that mentality.
of that mentality,
Samashilaha,
Samashilaha,
of the same categories.
of the same categories,
Bhajanti,
Bhajanti,
do worship.
do worship,
Vai,
Why?
actually.
Actually.
Pitri,
Pitri,
the forefathers.
the forefathers,
Bhuta,
Bhuta,
other living beings.
Other living beings.
Prajesha Adin,
Prajesha,
controllers of cosmic administration.
Controllers of cosmic administration.
Shriya,
Shreya,
enrichment.
Enrichment.
Aishvarya,
Aishwarya.
wealth and power.
wealth and power,
Praja,
Praja.
progeny.
Prajani.
Ipsavaha,
Ipsavaha.
so desiring.
So desiring.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities. For they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. Kindly repeat after me. Those who are in the modes of passion
those who are in the mode of passion
and ignorance
and ignorance,
worship the forefathers,
Worship the forefathers.
other living beings,
other living beings,
and the demigods
and the
Demigods.
demigods,
who are in charge
Who are
who are in charge
of cosmic activities.
of
Cosmic
cosmic
activities.
activities,
For they are urged
For they are urged
by a desire
by a desire
to be materially benefited
to be materially benefited
with women,
with women,
wealth,
wealth,
power,
power
and progeny.
and progeny.
Purport. There is no need to worship demigods of whatsoever category if one is serious about going back to Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:20 to 23, it is clearly said that those who are mad after material enjoyment approach the different demigods for temporary benefits, which are meant for men with a poor fund of knowledge. We should never desire to increase the depth of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment should be accepted only up to the point of the bare necessities of life, and not more or less than that. To accept more material enjoyment means to bind oneself more and more to the miseries of material existence. More wealth and more women and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man, because he has no information of the benefit derived from Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive benefit in this life as well as in life after death. Forgetting these principles, foolish people who are after more wealth, more wives, and more children worship various demigods. The aim of life is to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. For material enjoyment, there is no need to approach the demigods. The demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they are duty-bound to supply necessities of life in the form of water, light, air, etc. And the next line, should be heard very attentively because it is written in italic. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. This is worth repeating. One should work hard
Should work hard.
and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. One should be careful to execute occupational service with faith in God in the proper way, and that will lead one gradually on the progressive march back to Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna, when he was personally present at Brajadham, stopped the worship of the demigod Indra and advised the residents of Braja to worship by their business and to have faith in God. Worshipping the multi-demigods for material gain is practically a perversity of religion. Hare Krishna. A perversity of religion. This sort of religious activity has been condemned in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam as Kaitava Dharma. There is only one religion in the world to be followed by one and all, and that is the Bhagavat Dharma, or the religion which teaches one to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead and no one else. Translation again. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. So this is the description of those who are in the lower modes of material nature, in particular mode of passion and mode of ignorance. Means on the bodily platform, and generally engaged in, as mentioned here, worshipping forefathers, worshipping different demigods. And various types of demigod worship actually do bring material results. But we understand that the more we surround ourselves by material objects, the more we become bound through material relationships, the more we become entangled in the material world. And therefore, some of the very basic principles and concepts of the Vedic culture are being referred to here. The one that is especially underlined, and we read it twice already. I think it's worth reading a third time. Some of our guests just came a little on the late side to hear this very important instruction. In the latter part of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, one should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. That is why when we agree to become overly absorbed in modern day materialistic way of life, which is based on material well-being and ultimately sense gratification, we become heavily conditioned, and because of that conditioning, we find it very difficult to actually become detached. And that is especially the symptom of modern day way of living, especially in the cities. Prabhupada would explain how modern day cities are especially those places where the presence of the mode of ignorance and passion are very, very, very prominent. And therefore, Prabhupada used to explain how in previous times, villagers sometimes, not all the villagers, but sometimes people from the village, they would go to the city, but only for a short time. In, out, in, out. Just to get a little bit of money for something a little extra. Some repair in the house, or some daughter's marriage or something, whatever. But they knew that remaining too long in that type of atmosphere was not, it was part of the culture. So anything that is keeping us on the material bodily platform. Therefore, in the purport, Prabhupada explains how from the very first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have this instruction given by Shukadeva Goswami that the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually meant for the Paramahamsas, for those who are finished with their vain pursuit for so-called happiness in the material world. To practice Krishna consciousness, to continue our practice of Krishna consciousness, we have to develop this type of conviction that there is, as we were discussing the other day actually, there's no happiness to be found in the material world. And therefore, we are wasting our time simply by becoming attached or by serving or worshipping different other personalities. And the four most attractive features of the material world are of course mentioned here in the verse itself. Majority of people are enamored by these four activities or four features. Women for men, men for women, works both ways. Wealth, power, and progeny. One time Srila Prabhupada was visiting some home program with some of his disciples somewhere in India. And the owner of the house was very rich, pious, and he had quite a few members, family members. So he wanted to introduce all of them. You know, this is my wife, and you know, these are my sons, and these are my daughters, these are my grandsons, and these are my granddaughters. It took a while to introduce the whole lot, you know. And then after after the gentleman had in this way introduced the family members, then he left or something to go maybe to the other room, and Prabhupada turned to one of the devotees, just kind of like privately, saying that, and this is my sex life. Yeah. So these are the stumbling blocks for advancement in spiritual life. Family life, Bhagavatam explains, or Acharyas explains, is the most difficult thing to break away from. Do you know that? Family life, because one develops, you know, one lives with individuals, wife and children, in a very close and intimate manner, and one develops attachment naturally. And of course, why is family life so difficult to give up? That word is actually explained in the Bhagavatam. There is grihastha and grihamedi. Grihamedi. Those who are not Krishna conscious, they are in the category of grihamedi. Those who are devotees are supposed to be in the category of grihastha. Some may be still under the influence of grihamedi lifestyle. So Medi, everyone knows what is Medi, huh? You're all from India. You know, I think. Huh? Medi. No? Prabhupada explains how see, we're so far removed from our actual traditional lifestyle. So Srila Prabhupada explains that in the villages, I guess in some villages it is still practiced, after the harvest, of course, because people use machines nowadays, they don't understand about Medi. So the traditional way of husking the paddy, of dehusking, was to have one pole, and then the bullocks would walk around, and the paddy would be there, isn't it?
Yes,
We don't see that. Yeah, Medi here.
yes, I do also.
You do also. Yeah.
I also do a small one that time.
Still do now?
No.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. So, how do you spell Medi? M-E-D-H-I?
Yes.
D-H-I, Medhi. Yeah. So Prabhupada explains that Griha Medhi is just like that pole. The bullocks go around that pole. That pole represents sex life. Sex life means the attraction, family life is sex life. I mean, the attraction in the whole material world is sex life, either gross or subtle. But it is especially prominent naturally in householder life, because that is the only ashram in which there is concession, isn't it? For concession, not for unlimited sense gratification, but for regulated sense gratification with an objective, with a goal of stopping sense gratification. And stopping sense gratification means stopping sex life, actually. It's very interesting how one of our acharyas, Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, people sometimes they say these Hare Krishna people, they speak about two things especially, about death and sex life. But not in the same way that ordinary, not with the same understanding or the same whatever. But yeah, these two topics come up all the time in the Bhagavatam, in all the Shastra, because Mrityu, we are living in Mrityu Loka, place of death. And that repetition of birth and death continues as long as we remain attracted and attached to sex life. So one of our acharyas speaks about what's the expression he's using? He speaks about the psychology of sex life, but on the spiritual platform. Because actually sex life means attraction. And the original sex psychology, there's a purport actually in the Bhagavatam. The original sex psychology is in the spiritual world. So those who are interested in sex life should become interested in what's going on in the spiritual world. But that is very different than what we experience and understand in the material world. It means that actually the real attraction that will be fulfilling our desires, and that will be we could say unending, is that attraction on the spiritual transcendental platform. And that excuse me, and that actually is directly connected with bhakti. Bhakti is that very deep and strong attraction, and bhakti of course can only be known, experienced and developed ultimately between the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and the living entity. The fountainhead of bhakti, the fountainhead of attraction, the fountainhead of love is Krishna, isn't it? And until we come to that platform, we are simply roaming around in the material world, being frustrated again and again in our attempts to find happiness, to find satisfaction, to find so-called material love. And this purport is explaining about how majority of people who are not aware, who have no knowledge about the spiritual world, who have no knowledge about Krishna, because no one can live without seeking satisfaction. No one can live without, it's like, how long can we live without food? This body needs, things start to happen in the stomach when we don't eat. On certain fasting days maybe. Some devotees find it more difficult. It means it's our nature. This body, by nature, needs food, isn't it? Then it becomes, appeased, it becomes satisfied. But by nature, the spirit soul needs bhakti, needs love, pure love. which cannot be found, which cannot be had in the material world. And therefore, in order to actually obtain that pure love in connection with Krishna, it is only possible, it is only attainable when we give up everything else. But because for most people, it's not possible to give up immediately, therefore there is gradual, regulated giving up. Initially regulating the lower self, regulating the senses by the mind, regulating the mind by the intelligence, and regulating the intelligence by our superintelligence. Superintelligence means spiritual intelligence. Krishna speaks about, we were quoting that the other day. By deliberate spiritual intelligence, we can conquer all these lower levels of attraction. The seat of which, Krishna explains also in the Bhagavad Gita, is actually kama, lust. The perverted reflection being sex life in the material world, on the gross level and on the subtle level, seeking, demanding sometimes, recognition, adoration, prestige, subtle elements of sex life. So the Bhagavatam has that potency, has that quality of bringing us, of giving us that understanding, of introducing us to the process by which we can, even if we still have material desires, even if we're still full of material attachments, etc., still taking up this process. We were quoting akama sarva kamova moksha kama udaradi trivena bhakti yogena. With great determination, we should apply this process of bhakti, devotional service, and then slowly, gradually, that detachment will take place. That detachment will only take place to the extent that we develop attachment for something else. Unless we develop attachment for something else, we'll come back to our lower attachment, isn't it? And of course, that happens as we cultivate Krishna consciousness. Also comes naturally by this same process of bhakti. So, wealth, women, and here is not mentioned also followers, for those who happen to have disciples, having, many disciples, or even one doesn't need to have many disciples, even one disciple. One has to develop the proper understanding. So this is the verse again, text 27, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. Most devotees don't have any problem with demigod worship. So, but especially in India, those who are not devotees do have a problem with that, because they don't they still don't know about Krishna. So any question or clarification?
What is the purest form of karma in a spiritual world?
What is the purest form of karma?
Yes, inverted form of karma in a spiritual world.
The
Perverted form of karma.
in the spiritual world,
Yes.
there's no perverted form of anything in the spiritual
Like
world.
that, I heard just that there is karma, so also there is a purest form of like that.
No. Um, in the material world, there is kama, which we generally understand and translate as lust, which is ego-centered. In the spiritual world, that, let's say in the material world, that kama is actually a perverted reflection of the original kama, of the original, we call prema, love. Kama, we use the word love in the material world in very loosely. Yeah. So in the spiritual world, everything is totally pure, unadulterated, and that pure consciousness and activity is, as described in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, ahaitukiya pratihata yagatma suprasiditi, unmotivated, uninterrupted, pure love, exchange of emotions to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We only find in the spiritual world what is totally pure and original. So that is also described by Srila Jiva Goswami as Priti. His sixth of the Sandarbhas is, he has called it Priti Sandarbha, which is a culmination of bhakti, which begins with understanding the initial level of what is our actual identity, what is the identity of God also, yeah. It is only when we have a proper understanding of our nature, of our original nature, we will begin to engage in activities of bhakti. And then as we perfect those activities of bhakti, then we will actually experience these the pure original level of prema, of love, pure love. It can be manifest, it can be experienced also in the material world. And we have so many examples of various of our acharyas. By their, we can understand by their activities, by their writings, by their speaking, that they are on that platform. So therefore, we are encouraged to follow Mahajana Jainagata Sapantaha. We follow in the footsteps of such liberated personalities, Mahajans. You're disappointed because there's nothing perverted in the spiritual world. Maybe
One question related to cows.
related to cows. Wow, that's a big shift.
Actually, we hear that in Sanskrit we saw that many of they're saying that we do not tie cow in any time. So what is the Vedic reference we should tie in the night of cow or did not tie anytime?
To tie or not to tie?
Yes. What is the Vedic
That is the question. So the question is whether cows should be tied at night or even during the day for that matter, because most people tie their cows in the day also. Mostly because they don't have place for them to walk around. They don't have any grazing ground. I don't have the reference to tie or not to tie, but we have literatures that give information on how to handle or how to care for cows. And because so few of our own devotees are keeping cows, so there are various understandings about that. Just like, should bulls have a nose ring or not? Should bulls be castrated or not? There are different references. These are important things, of course, to know or to study, and one needs to approach individuals who are more knowledgeable on these matters. We know that, for example, our experience at SSKBK, and I'm sure similar experience in other Goshalas possibly, is that, well, one thing, for example, that a Goshala at night time should have some light. I think you know that. There should be some kind of light. Actually, not only for cows. When we also sleep at night, there should be a light. You know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Night bulb.
Yeah, night bulb. The name comes from that. Small light.
Zero voltage.
Huh?
Zero voltage.
0 voltage, not zero.
How it went?
0 voltage means zero light. But because there was no light in Goshala one time, if there's a small calf born, for example, you know, calves, they don't wait for the lights. I mean, cows will give birth anytime, right? So if the calf is born at night, and so sometimes cow will step accidentally and the calf may die. So there are different, you know, practical, of course, normally if someone is a good cowherd, he will know that his cow is pregnant. He will know when the cow will also be likely to deliver her calf, and they will generally put separate. Yeah. So there's so many details actually are there regarding cow care, which can be substantiated also in the Shastra. So, who was telling me just a few days ago? I think when I was in Kamyavan. So, one devotee, I forget now, was mentioning how the calves, you can tell me if you have that experience or not, but the calves apparently will not drink milk at nighttime from their mother. Do you find that? They still drink.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes.
I still drink.
Huh?
Still drink.
Yamuna
They have a
is,
pandu in our Goshala. In night, one time he jumped from the boundaries and go to.
Went to his mother.
Yeah, Yamuna also so many times drink milk. Night time.
Nighttime is it?
Yeah, let's say I'm not giving you your milk.
Whenever in the morning, Maharaj, you don't get milk, that's what happens.
Night time mother coming sometime. Is sometime a lock is open, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
A mother come and giving milk. After going their place and sleeping.
Very caring mother, huh? But one devotee was telling me something different. But anyways, that so much for that theory. The point is that because nowadays very few of our devotees are keeping cows, so many things we don't actually know about cows.
We had also some experience in our worship.
Of calves drinking milk at night.
In Mangalore on Goshala,
Huh?
on Goshala, calf is not drinking mother milk. He take milk and give the bucket after drinking that milk. Directly he go not take the mother milk.
Oh, he will take from the bucket.
But he doing that culture, that calf. समझ गए ना प्रभु, वो डायरेक्ट पीता नहीं, वो उसको निकल के बकेट में देके जब भी पीते हो, नहीं तो डायरेक्ट जाके माँ का दूध नहीं पीते.
Same thing what you said. Now it has a culture of only drinking milk from the bucket, not from the
Mother. But that's not natural, is it?
Not natural Maharaj. He is
Loving नहीं होता ना
wrong.
उसमें, प्रेम नहीं होता है.
Oh, yeah, well, there's so many irregular, uncommon practices, and yeah.
The medicinal value of the milk also increases, especially evening milk.
Medicinal value of the milk is more in the evening. Your experience.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
Many doctors of the cows also told.
Is
After
it?
grazing, they are fully satisfied, and
Okay.
they come back and they are very happy and they give very good milk.
Okay.
Happily also.
Morning time is more milk. Evening time less milk giving cows.
Well, it takes some time, I guess. When the cows return after grazing in the afternoon, it takes some time for that grass to be converted into milk, I suppose.
But the satisfaction level for them is more. To give milk.
Satisfaction. Yeah. Anyways, okay. I'm not sure how we came on the topic of cows from Rajagun and Tamagun and demigods. Yeah, we jumped to Satsagun. That's the way to go. Yeah. Okay, we'll close here. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Sri Prabhupada ki Gaura Premanandi. Rameshwar Prabhu.